You want me to take over for Daphne? I mean, Chastity. Oh, I know it.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad that you're joining us tonight on our presentation, Preserving Our Story, the Importance of Black Neighborhoods. Next slide, please. Chastity. Next slide. I'm gonna give you give you information about Russell Place of Promise. Russell Place of Promise is a justice-based initiative being incubated by Louisville Metro Government and Cities United. We are fiscally sponsored by the Community Foundation of Louisville, but in 2023, we will launch into a community-based organization designed by the residents. RPOP was created in 2019 to support the investment in Russell without displacement of residents. RPOP's vision of building Black wealth without displacement that includes connecting individuals and families to resources leading to home ownership, building pathways and opportunities for tradition and non-tradition retention, and creating innovative connections to careers, job placement, and growth and community ownership of neighborhood assets. And tonight, my name is Jackie Floyd. I'm the lead community outreach specialist with RPOP under Cities United.
And I am,
Chastity?
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
You all hear me? And I am Chastity White. I am the housing project manager for Russell, A Place of Promise, on the place-based side of the strategy. And first, before we get into the presentation or the conversation, we're gonna start off with discussing what exactly, like, why are we here? Why are we having this conversation? What is the importance of the homecoming, our home, Russell Homecoming 2021? And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about the history of Black ownership, prevention, proposed ordinances, social justice-based initiatives, and any displacement prevention strategies. We're going to go into question and answer. So we're going to talk about we're going to have a conversation and any audience questions, and then we're going to show our commercial, what we have coming up for this weekend, and we're going to close us out. And Ms. Jackie Floyd already went over who are we. And she also discussed, she also let you know that our vision is to build Black wealth through investment without displacement. So it includes our 4 wealth building pathways, including housing, workforce, and business development. And I, again, work on the housing strategies to create pathways for sustainable home ownership in the Russell neighborhood. And Ms. Jackie, she focuses on creating partnerships with our residents. So we do a whole host of community building, which is our purpose for our past events and any of our upcoming events. So definitely want to check us out this weekend at our Homecoming 2021 starting Friday. And so as we talk about preserving our story in Black neighborhoods, a lot of people, even myself, before reading about Centuries of Black Louisville by Dr. Blaine Hudson, I want to make sure I got that right. But he talks about all the history of Black neighborhoods in Louisville. Those that are historical, and then those that are have always been in existence, like the James Taylor neighborhood. And so as we talk about what is homecoming to us, although widely celebrated at all institutions of higher learning, homecoming celebrated specifically at historically Black colleges and universities are historically significant because they're used as a time to celebrate the rich history and really roll out the carpet for the alumni. And so that's what we're doing. We're rolling out the carpet for the residents, the current residents, those that are returning, those that had any connection, those that work in Russell, rolling out the red carpet for you because you are what make Russell. And so at HBCU Homecomings, I graduated from Fisk University 2014. We celebrate the rich history every year. And it allows us to see that we all have the same ideology or collective knowledge that there is power vested in our beloved institutions. And so we know that white supremacy is what led us to our institutions, but we are the ones that celebrate that legacy. And so here's what we want to see this gives you a picture of what homecoming, how the experience may go. Ooh, so that is Fisk University's homecoming. And it was about 2 years ago, actually 2017, oh my gosh. But anyway, that is certainly the visuals that I would love for us to have at homecoming, bringing us together, bringing us back. And as the alumni come back, they give back. And so this weekend is Good for Good. So give for good to a place that is making changes and, wanting to create partnerships with the residents in the community. And so, just get back to your beloved institution. So I'm also speaking to HBCU alum out there as homecoming season is approaching, as we kick us off with our home, Russell Homecoming 2021. And so, so save the dates. So as we talk about Black neighborhoods, I think about Theaster Gates, who is an urban planner and also an artist, which is very significant because his love for Black history also comes into play, because he makes sure that whatever development rehabilitates in his community, that it still has Black history instilled in it. And so as an artist, he said that when he thinks about home for himself, it has less to do with the house. It has more to do with the neighborhood, which is extremely, extremely important. As I jumped ahead to our icebreaker, Ms. Jackie Floyd.
Okay. The icebreaker question is, what makes a house a home? So we're gonna do it popcorn style. Anybody can just jump in. Kevin, did you want to say something? I see you moving around.
I think that's your way of calling me out, Jackie. But no, so I'll answer the question from our perspective. I think a house is a home by the people that are inside of it.
I agree with you on that. Jakuri, you look sort of puzzled, like, did you want to say something?
Nah, not at all. I would love to say something, and thank you for having me. Thank you so much. When I think of a house becoming a home, I think of really just the place you live having some sort of value to you. I know the house that I live in now, the home that I have now that me and my kids live in is in the Russell neighborhood. And it's the first home that I've made my own, that, you know, I'm not being taken care of by someone else. It's a house that I bought. So it has a special value to me. It'll always be important to me, whether I'm there for the rest of my life or I'm there for the next 10 years of my life. It'll always be the first place that I bought, that I purchased, that I called my own. So when I think of a house being a home, I think of a place that you live that has value to you.
Well, Councilman Arthur, I'm glad that you have your home in the Russell community. Ms. Holt, you got that look on your face too, like you wanted to say something, okay? You know, maybe I'm just misreading the signs, but you want to say something.
Well, I definitely agree with Councilman Arthur and Mr. Dunlap. It's definitely the memories that you build in that home. I can remember my childhood home and just playing with my sister or my cousins coming over, the sleepovers we had. Those are the memories that I have that made it my home. And I grew up in West Dayton. That's a bit similar to West Louisville in that it's a predominantly African-American community. There was a school across the street that I remember going over and playing on the playground and playing with the kids in the neighborhood. And it was a community that came together for festivals at the local park and at that school. So we came together and made memories as a community together, and it became my home. And so that's what makes a house a home, is the community around it and the memories it creates together.
I can't see Mr. Davis, but I feel like I'm getting this vibe he want to say something. Mr. Davis, are you on?
I am. I'm so glad to be here. House is a home for all the reasons that my fellow panelists said, but also for me, it's just that safety, you know, for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 8 hours, nothing coming inside. That's the reason why my grandmother, you say everyone can't come in your house because you got to protect your peace, right?
Yes.
So that's to me what makes a house a home.
Well, thank you. Chastity, I'm seeing you shaking your head. Did you want to say something too?
Sure. I think what makes a house a home for me is I'm not sure if I'm just looking at it from urban planning perspective, but it's really the neighborhood in which I'm in. Because when I, thought about where I lived, I thought about a lot of different things like transportation. I thought about how far I was from something, and then I thought about the people in that neighborhood too. I thought about if I was going to be surrounded by love, if I was going to be surrounded by people that were looking at me crazy. I needed to know that I was going to be in a community that I know my daughter would love to grow up in. And when I go to neighborhoods like Russell, like Shawnee, like Parkland, California, I feel the love, which is why I know that students at HBCUs, why they go back and visit and give back, because the institution that loved us, we now love it. And so, so thank you. That's just my sense.
For me, what makes a house a home is my 5 children, my 12 grandchildren, and my 4 great-grandchildren. When they walk in there, that's a home. that's an opportunity. We're making memories. We love each other. And I just want to tell you this little short story. My mother lived on Kentucky in the Victory Park area. She she had to go into a nursing home. So the house was vacant for a long time. But the nieces and the nieces and the nephews, they would go and sit on my mother's front porch, even though they couldn't get in the house. But that to them, she said, this is grandmama's home. This is what we felt, love, the memories, and being here makes us feel safe. So I just want to tell y'all that. So a home is just more than a building or a structure. It's the people that's on the inside. Okay.
That love that you
The
feel.
love. Yes.
And tonight we're joined by our lovely panelists, Ms. Naya Holt, AICP certified. She's a zoning administrator for Riverside, Ohio. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Then we have Mr. Corey Arthur, our councilman for District 4. Here in Louisville, Elijah Davis. He's a program director at Urban Impacts in Birmingham, Alabama, and a representative for HANDS, which is the Historical African American Neighborhoods and District Summit. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And then we have Mr. Kevin Dunlap, the executive director for Rebound Incorporated here in Louisville.
Okay, before we get started, I just want to let everybody know that Councilman Arthur is my councilman in the city of Louisville, okay? He represents Russell and other communities, but I just claim him as the representative for Russell all the time. Ms. Holt, we would like you to take the first question. What is the historical significance of urban planning and Black neighborhoods?
That is a loaded question that I could spend hours on. But the short answer is urban planning had a role in, I'm going to be blunt, destroying and undermining the Black community. We can go back to the era right after slavery. We were promised 40 acres and a mule. Never came to realize. Fast forward to urban renewal, there was deed restrictions that said if there was a Negro trying to move in, we don't want them. All these policies led to Blacks being pushed into small areas of the community. And so we had to form our own neighborhoods because the zoning laws and other restrictions didn't leave any other options for us. So we made our own communities for ourselves, for our own protection and for our own livelihoods. So that's the short answer.
So would you like for me
Thank
to play your presentation?
Well, I don't know if there's any other questions. We can definitely do that, but if the other panelists want to join in, this is your show. I'm just here.
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to, so this question is an answer that Naya can provide for us, since it does involve the zoning and have conversation about it afterwards. And so I'm going to go ahead and share your presentation.
Okay, well, here we go.
Okay. Okay. It is screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, a little
Okay.
bit. Okay,
Okay, can you see it?
yes.
All right, Naya?
All right. Well, I guess this gets us into it. So this presentation was created for today to talk about that very question. How does urban planning and zoning laws impact the Black neighborhood in the past, and what policies are being proposed today to kind of combat those past detrimental policies? If you want to go forward, thank you. So these 3 statements are the first, the 4th, and the 10th points from the Black Panthers 10-point program. So what the Black Panthers understood from these statements, I'll give you a chance to read them. So what they understood is that housing and the power to make decisions about the land in your community is important for sustainable and strong neighborhoods. And zoning is integral in that. Next slide, please. So what is zoning? Zoning is the separation of land by use and form. So for example, you can see in this image, you have a section that's dedicated strictly to commercial, but there can also be restrictions on the number of housing units in an area. Next slide, please. So zoning really shapes our lives and the places we live. It can restrict how we get to schools, places to work, healthcare facilities, but it separates more than just land uses. It separates people. And for a long time, we had exclusionary, or it was used as an exclusionary tool. Next slide, please. And let me know if I'm going too fast. So this timeline kind of just highlights some of the major events in both history and in land use. Some of these events, you're like, really? This had to do with land use? And I'm gonna pull those out and talk about those in more detail. Next slide, please. Oh, well, I had a different one, but if you want to go back to the history slide, I want to talk about the few. Back up. All right, thank you. So a few I want to talk about is I mentioned earlier in my answer, the Reconstruction era. What undermined us from getting land? Well, the Union soldiers auctioned off land to freed slaves. However, there were Southern lawyers that went to Congress and petitioned to have that land given back to white Southerners. If we go closer to home to many of you in Louisville, there was a law that was passed in 1914, a segregation ordinance that forbade whites from moving into a predominantly Black block and vice versa. This was overturned in 1917 by the Supreme Court on the basis of property rights, not because of it segregated the races, but because of property rights. So they're like, okay, let's try something else. Let's try putting restrictions on our deeds, and when we make new subdivisions, have racial covenants that say, we don't want Negroes there. No one of African descent or immigrants, Irish, Jews, what have you, but we all know that they were able to assimilate into the broader white population. Not true for African Americans or Blacks. That was struck down in 1948 with Shelley v. Kramer, but there was other ways. In 1933, the Home Owners Loan Corporation instituted redlining. Appraisals went out to over 226 cities around the country and looked at different communities, mostly Black and immigrant, to determine if it was worth giving loans in those communities. If it was red or a bad area, mostly Black, we're not giving loans there. Green, mostly white, we'll do that. And that became redlining. We see these maps over and over and the same pattern exists. Then we move on to urban renewal. Cities decided which areas would be blighted and selected for slum clearance. This also aligned with the Federal Highway Act, and those highways went through just those slum cleared areas, again, mostly Black and poor neighborhoods, literally through those neighborhoods, cutting those cities apart and separating people. We all talked about what those homes meant to us. That was literally destroying communities and those memories they had. We know we said places are more than those people and structures, but they could never visit those again because they were destroyed by those highways and those slum clearance. And I'll skip a little bit ahead to Hope 6. That was a program known as Housing and Opportunity for People Everywhere. It ended in about 2012 when it was defunded. Praise for great work. I know there's a few projects in Louisville, if I remember correctly. But there were some criticisms of it as mostly a economic redevelopment program instead of a housing program. Many of the people who were moved out for that mixed income development to take place had a hard time coming back. The poorest or hardest to house weren't able to come back to many of those programs, or excuse me, many of those redeveloped housing projects. So just wanted to hit a few of the highlights. So if we can go on to the next slide. So what you find out is a lot of those policies that were meant to help actually had a huge impact, a detrimental impact to poor and minority communities. And I have here a redlining map, which I mentioned before, but this is for my hometown of Dayton, Ohio. And I don't have control of the mouse, but I would show you where I grew up, but it's in one of those redlining communities right along the river. And I remember growing up, my grandfather would tell me if they closed one of the bridges to the river, Black people would be closed or be stopped on the west side. You couldn't be able to get over. They had an easy way just to cut us off from the rest of the community. You can go to the next slide. So what are some ways that people are trying to combat those past policies? One city, Minneapolis, is the largest city that's trying to do this, is eliminate single family zoning. A lot of single family zoning districts only allow that one use, one lot on one property. So they're like, let's get rid of that. They adopted a plan, that's their 2040 comprehensive plan that allows duplexes and triplexes everywhere. Another thing, and I'm sure Mr. Davis can talk more about this, is preservation organizations. So I'm gonna nod to you on that one, but it allows urban planning and connects residents to that concept through preserving historic areas and sites. And Preservation Dayton, which is a community in my hometown, I'm gonna keep bringing it up, that has a way for citizens to nominate structures to be on their top 10 list. And they raise funds to preserve those structures every year. They also have tours so people can understand the history of those historic Black neighborhoods and celebrate it. Because you don't understand the value of those neighborhoods, you can't really embrace it. And sorry, this won't talk a minute. You can't really sit and have the value of those neighborhoods and embrace it and want to preserve it. I also mentioned earlier that land use is separated. So if you have market gardens, you can grow and sell food right there in the urban community. There's also food cooperatives. Those are grocery stores that are owned by the residents in the community, and it's for their benefit. Gem City Market opened in Dayton, Ohio in May of 2020. And I get their newsletters all the time. I'm a member. They're always asking, what can we do better? What brands are you looking for? What produce do we have that you need or do not have? So next slide. I'm going to skip over the ones because I know there's other people who want to talk, because I think the last one is pretty interesting. Evanston, Illinois is looking at reparations. They have a program that they are funding with their medical marijuana tax and giving people up to $25,000, Black residents, $25,000 for down payment or home repair. I think that's just incredible. So that started earlier this year. So just to conclude, how do we get to our desired future to our past? Like, how does that connection happen? So this is the last slide. We have to really redesign our communities using a people-driven approach and reinvest in our communities that have been devalued and really educate ourselves on those histories. So that's all I have. Sorry I ran through that. I just want other people to have a chance to talk, but also give you enough information about that.
Thank you.
But I'm here for questions later on.
So our next question is to Mr. Arthur. What ordinances are being drafted to preserve Black neighborhoods?
So earlier this year, MLK Day actually, on the nose, I announced along with the Smoketown Neighborhood Association, a draft for something known as the Historically Black Neighborhoods Ordinance. As we talk about the intentional policies that were meant to harm us, we were thinking about what could we do intentionally through policy to help us. And this ordinance came about and really unfolded to have three different impacts. There are three significant sections that would affect us in these ways. Number one, labeling a neighborhood that was settled by enslaved people, by freedmen, AKA us, throughout recreation, throughout the Reconstruction period, throughout Jim Crow, and making sure that we understand those borders of that neighborhood are considered historically Black neighborhoods. The people, the structures within them, all of the above. Number two is assessing any development that takes place within that neighborhood. And within that neighborhood, it could be a house being built, it could be an apartment complex being built, it could be a grocery store being built, it could be a skating rink. Assessing it to make sure that the people living next to it, the people within a close proximity to it, can actually afford it. And number three, if they cannot afford it, if they cannot afford to live in it, if they cannot afford to play in it, if they cannot afford to shop in it, then Louisville Metro government will not help you build it. That means you can't use our land, you can't use our property, you can't use our money, and you cannot use our employees. You can almost think of it as the opposite. We talked about redlining earlier, almost like the opposite of redlining, where through that practice, when you had large groups of Black people, they were rejected. But through this policy, when you have large groups of Black people, they're going to be protected. And I'll also end with this. You know, a lot of times when we talk about history or when we use the word historic, we're thinking about property. The Historically Black Neighborhoods Ordinance is saying that the people themselves are historic and that they must be preserved and they must be protected. So that's the ordinance in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions about it. I'm happy to go back and forth, have any dialogue about it, but that is the Historically Black Neighborhoods Ordinance that I'm proud to say is one of a kind in our country in terms of preserving Black neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you for that. And we will certainly get into conversation around that here shortly, and see how it is that, you know, we can help push this through or support this. So I am.
Next question
Yes.
for Mr. Davis. Why is it important that we fight to preserve Black neighborhoods?
Well, thank you so much. I'm so, number one, glad to be here. And you all are doing a fantastic work. It is important to preserve Black neighborhoods because it's important that Black people get to live freely. We talked about what makes a house a home, and a place where we are, that we've built, that we've occupied, that we struggle with, have tears with, have joy with, is extremely important. And, one of the things that, was so inspiring about the councilman's presentation just a few seconds ago is the fact that when we think about the genesis of this country, this country was settled and, taken in a sense on the premise of land and the premise of experience and the premise of ownership. And ourselves as a people group have been both disbarred for hundreds of years and generations from just being able to do that. So when we talk about, neighborhoods, people, structures, memories, places, we also really think about our right of being, particularly in this Western and American context. And so that's why it's important. It's not just a fight for a building or a piece of bricks, but it's a fight for place and being.
Thank you for that, Mr. Davis.
Please call me Elijah.
Okay. Would you like for me to play your presentation?
That'd be great.
Okay.
That'd be great.
You all cannot see my screen. You all see my screen?
Yep. Well, thank you all so much again for being here. My name is Elijah Davis, and I am so glad to be just a small part of your homecoming. I hail from the best Southern state, Alabama. I'm a Bama boy through and through, originally from Mobile, Alabama, and a resident and a worker and a lover of Birmingham, Alabama. I come to you today to speak on behalf of an organization that myself and another, and really all of us, I'm going to say, are co-founding and in the work, the historic African American Neighborhood District Summit, which launched earlier this year. And we simply work to preserve, enhance, and elevate historic Black neighborhoods and commercial districts by strengthening the connections between the people who serve them. So next slide, please. So really who we are, essentially, I am a program director at Urban Impact. Urban Impact is the community economic development agency that serves the historic 4th Avenue Business District and the Birmingham Civil Rights National Monument District. One of the things that most people know about our district is the terrorism of the 4 little girls being bombed, but they also know the struggle for civil rights, and one of the greatest demonstrations for civil and human rights in world history being Project C and the Children's Crusade in May of 1963. We have the pleasure of serving that historic neighborhood and that historic community day in and day out in those. The 70 years before 1963, our community was built by everyday people, everyday Black people that has a long history of entrepreneurship going back to the 1890s. In addition, our joint venture here is with Sweet Auburn Works, which is our sister organization, and we often tease each other that we're very alike and that we have statues of MLK everywhere that we can't seem to get rid of. And anyway, but Sweet Auburn Works is the cultural steward and development steward of the Sweet Auburn district and corridor in Atlanta, Georgia. And so a few years ago, coming to this work early, I really wanted to benchmark what other historic Black districts were doing and also think through ways that we could improve. I ran across my co-founder, Leanna Varnell, and really began down this path of how we create a true network and a true base of advocacy for this very specific work that lies at the intersection of historic preservation, equitable development, and sort of cultural heritage work. And so because of that nexus, we thought that it was extremely important. We also happen to be affiliated with the National Maine Center and the Urban Maine program and found some commonalities there. And so HANDS essentially, we'll get into it, but we are so grateful to our sponsor in this first year, the National Trust for Historic Preservation's African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund, that really helped to get this piece off the ground. Next slide, please. So I'll go sort of quickly to make sure we keep the time, but this is my block. As I told you, I'm from Mobile, Alabama. I've lived in South Side of Chicago. I've lived in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I've lived in Mississippi, and I now live in Birmingham. But my home, a place where my family has been for over 100 years, is a neighborhood called The Bottom. Mobile is home to a lot of historic Black figures. You know, it is that. So this is my block. This building is the Booker T Theater. I live literally, I grew up in a house across the street. This is a lot that I played football in. But all across the neighborhood, there are these historic plaques of First Black this. We have the oldest First Black newspaper, one of the first Black millionaires in the state, among many, many other things. I went to a HBCU for community college for a semester that's also down the street. Just this incredible history in this community that my family contributed to and many others did. And so thinking about, well, wow, this was this booming Black neighborhood that my grandmother talked about, what more could there be? Next slide, please. And so as I came to college at UAB to study economics, on the way back from the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute and 16th Street Baptist Church, I ran into the block. I ran into the Strip. I ran into Mr. Jones. I ran into Mr. Charles Hicks. I ran into Gaymon. I ran into Miss Nelson and felt immediately home. And I felt home because it was the historic 4th Avenue Business District, one of the top 5 historic African-American main streets in the early 20th century. This is a picture that comes from the 1930s that shows what the Strip looked like. And this is the neighborhood that we still have the opportunity to serve. Next slide, please. And so not only does it have this pre-civil rights history of entrepreneurship going back to 1890 with banks and architecture. In fact, the first African-American credentialed architect, Robert Robertson Taylor, who went on to found the Tuskegee School, designed the Masonic Temple. And the second credentialed African-American architect, Wallace Rayfield, designed 16th Street Baptist Church and most of the district. This was also, again, the site of Black movement, as I'll talk a little bit about in a second. And here's a picture from the CBS, the Children's Crusade, and you can see the historic Carver Theater and Masonic Temple in the background. So this is directly in the site. Next slide, please. And here's another picture that describes that week of 2,000 folks coming up out of the house that had enough. But what you see here is the A.G. Gaston Motel, which is actually the home of the National Park Service. In the midnight hour of President Obama presidency, he declared this a national monument with the help of Representative Terry Sewell. And to the right, that is the A.G. Gaston office building. These structures still exist very much today. Next slide, please. And here's an up-to-date photo of a pre-COVID annual event that we typically have, which is the Taste of 4th Avenue Jazz Festival, now in its 18th year, where we line the street and celebrate the rich history, jazz history of Birmingham that is home to Sun Ra, Lionel Hampton, and many other folks. Next slide. So essentially, HANDS is number one, a national network of organizations and people preserving, promoting, and perpetuating historic Black main streets and neighborhoods. Our actual logo comes and is referenced in Durham, the Fitzgerald brick, if you will. We hope to continue to build a network of camaraderie, a network that will help us continue to really just share ideas and be on the forefront of new things as we preserve and look forward. A recurring summit. We had our first summit virtually in this May on the same week as we remembered the 100 years of Greenwood. And we were so excited to have a diversity of speakers across from districts. And we continue to move forward. And we're also an advocate for the next 100 years of Black main streets and neighborhoods. Next slide, please. And as we think about some of the key focus areas of a toolkit that we'll be building, and as well as a directory of our pretty much almost 40 plus neighborhoods and counting, as far as Iowa, Seattle, Nebraska, and in the Southeast that are mostly known, we really want to figure out how we can just be helpful and add and not take over conversations around historic preservation and storytelling, equitable growth and redevelopment, community organizing, and Black entrepreneurship. And the final slide, please. So as you please join us at hands.org to get more. The background picture is a picture that the conference organizer actually put on, a frequent collaborator and placemaker, Carmen Mays. She had hosted an event in the district called Black Ann on August 28th, which is a very important date in our history. And we really believe this represents the opportunity. A lot of people misuse the term adaptive reuse and a whole bunch of stuff, but we believe that neighborhoods are continual, have a story, and can be preserved and still be relevant and be useful and really be a space for us to be. So I'm so grateful to be to you both as that hands, but also as a practitioner, as Urban Impact. We've been around for 40 years doing this work, and we're unique because we began as a city agency and now are a 501c3 nonprofit. And the first Black mayor basically said, you know what, we're gonna have a commercial land bank, and we're gonna buy these properties and sell them back. And so as of today, we have 25 Black-owned property owners in the middle of downtown. We also have 55 Black-owned businesses, and we also are on the national register like 3 times. Both as a corridor, as a national monument, and as the Birmingham Civil Rights District. And even with all of those assets, our zip code, which is the downtown zip code, according to Opportunity Zone data, is still the greatest displacement risk in Birmingham. And so though we have preserved much over a generation of preservation and revitalization, we still have much to gain, and if we're not careful, much to lose. And so that's why we so gratefully love these opportunities to not just share the message, but just network humbly and think about how we collaboratively move these districts forward for the next 100 years. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that presentation. That was really powerful. And Hands is doing a great job, like awesome. And this is a lot of the stuff what you like is very new to me, although I have been, doing a little research on what you have been doing, but to hear about it, it's wonderful.
Thank you.
So let's see. So we're gonna go to the next slide. Share my screen. Okay. Can you all see my presentation? Can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay. So the next question is for you, Mr. Dunlap. What strategies is your organization implementing to prevent displacement in Black neighborhoods?
Well, the first thing that we're trying to do is to increase Black home ownership in the neighborhoods that we work in. And that has primarily been the focus of Rebound since its inception, is to create home ownership for African Americans. And we have been very successful at doing that. But when I talk about home ownership, I'm not talking about, just the purchasing of the land, but I'm talking about using home ownership as a potential source of wealth building for that family for generations, having something to leave to your children, to their children, and to their children. But we look at home ownership in a different way. Typically, people think about home ownership as a single family detached house. One of my views is why can't we look at home ownership in different ways that we typically haven't looked at, particularly looking at duplexes, because I think duplex is an ideal way for African Americans to not only become homeowners and property owners, but it also creates an instant way for them to begin to earn income as well. So you actually become a homeowner and a business owner all at the same time. So Rebound recently launched that within our portfolio of what we do. One of the things that we tell new homeowners in this arena is that we know that you don't have any idea of how to be a landlord. You don't have any idea possibly of how to treat one side as a business, the other side as your home. But Rebound as an organization, we are here to work with you, at least for the first 3 to 5 years of your home ownership, to make sure that you're on the right track, connecting you to those entities that are going to be able to help you to maintain that going forward. The other area that we are focusing on and we're looking to break ground relatively soon on is what has been lacking here in West Louisville, in many of the neighborhoods in West Louisville, is a shared equity type of homeownership, or maybe a condo or per se. And I've been hearing that not only from African Americans, but I'm also elected officials are telling me, why can't I get a condo in West Louisville? And so Rebound is embarking on that effort as well. But it's very key to us that we create housing opportunities that the people in the communities can afford. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that? So we know that in certain neighborhoods, and particularly here in Russell, the average household income is roughly $30,000 or below. So how much house can a person actually afford, with that kind of money? And are you building houses to do that? And I tell everybody, as a developer, construction costs are what they are. I mean, housing costs are what they are. How do I offset that? So what we do is we find subsidy. We find subsidy for the buyer to be able to afford that. So that means that, oftentimes African Americans who are purchasing our home get automatically subsidy to help them to qualify to be able to purchase that home. What people don't realize at that time, and that's one of the things that we're trying to teach people, is that investment that we are putting in on the front end to make the house affordable for you. You don't have to pay us back. That's being forgiven to you. That becomes instant equity for you. Equity that you have that you could potentially use to do other things with. So those are just some of the things that Rebound is involved in as a developer. We are part of an initiative here in Louisville called the Path Forward. And with the Path Forward, we are embarking on creating and building 100 brand new homes on vacant and abandoned properties in West Louisville for the purposes of homeownership for African Americans. And I'm very excited about that. And hopefully we can get back to some of these questions around zoning and all of that, because all of that plays a part in the work that I do. But the last piece that I want to bring up is something that Rebound got involved in, started looking at maybe a couple of years ago. And that's the whole idea around community land trust. And one of the things I began to notice and have lived here all my life is that a lot of the neighborhoods that were historically Black and rich with history and everybody walking down the street and everybody knew each other were rapidly changing. And when I say rapidly changing, they no longer look like me. They were no longer Black people that were, now hanging a shingle up saying this is my home and this is home ownership. So I began to look around and recognize that all across the country, other people were doing this thing called a community land trust, whereby the community itself actually controls what is developed, built, whether it's housing or commercial in their own neighborhoods. They actually have control of it. So what Rebound did was Rebound had been in conversations with, Russell Place of Promise and also individuals in the Smoketown neighborhood. So there were funding that actually came out available to help facilitate this type of work. And Rebound actually applied for it. We applied for all of the money that was available, and we wanted to focus on 2 neighborhoods. And our goal for doing that was to, first of all, and I'm being very transparent, get the money. Let's get the money and hold that money. Because I know how budgets go in municipalities. If it ain't allocated, if it ain't used, then it gets swept and it gets used for something else totally different. So my goal was, let's get the money. And my second goal was to really facilitate these conversations around community land trust within the neighborhoods, within the people that actually live there, with the goal of them coming together, creating a community land trust that will help them not only sustain Black home ownership, but make it affordable in perpetuity. So that's some of the things that Rebound is involved in right now. And that's it.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so that leads me into my next question. So, well, actually, it's really time for a conversation and any audience question, but even to start off with discussing zoning, as you mentioned, Kevin, that this is really the reason for all of this. One of the zoning policies that even Louisville Metro uses is building ordinances. And so that really translates back to the reasoning for Tulsa, Oklahoma, not being able to rebuild after the race massacre. Because as soon as, people were denied for their insurance claims, they then implemented an ordinance that stated if, you had to build a certain height. And so how do you believe, and we can start off with is Mr. Davis still on here?
Yes.
You say he is? Can't see him.
Yeah.
Mr. Davis, how did the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre change the landscape of asset ownership for Black people? And actually, either Mr. Davis or anyone can chime in on that question.
I don't see him on here, but I'll speak more broadly because Tulsa is a blip on a larger timeline of history of white violence and white mobs. I'll even think about the entire state of Kentucky. We used to have one of the largest Black populations. About a fifth of our population was Black. But over the course of time, post-Civil War, there was so much terrorism, lynchings, shootings, schools, churches, homes being burned to the ground. This white terror caused, on a larger macro level, this mass displacement, this mass exodus of Black people. So now we have a smaller population, about 8% of our state is Black. And that is a larger, in a larger field of what Tulsa actually was, this idea of terrorism really leading to displacement, or really, as we talk about gentrification, we talk about displacement at the neighborhood level, terrorism leading to it in the exact same fashion. It's just kind of evolved over time. And you might not necessarily go into a neighborhood and lynch somebody physically, but you can definitely lynch them economically when you push them out by raising their rent, when you push them out through zoning, which, by the way, in Louisville, Kentucky, 3/4 of our city, 75% of our city since the 60s has been zoned for single families. So over the course of time, as we think about the West End and historically Black neighborhoods, none of this happened by accident. There wasn't a tornado that magically picked up all the Black people and put them in the West End. This was orchestrated by our government, local, state, and federal. And that's why we are where we are today. I'm glad to hear Sister Hope talk about the fact that they're eliminating single family zoning where she is. That's an effort that we're working on here as well, and making sure that zoning is more inclusive across the city, because as long as you use zoning, you might as well just be putting up signs that say Blacks only, whites only. That's the coded language. So we're working on that here locally, and I was glad to hear somebody else is working on that too.
Anybody else want to chime in? Mr. Dunlap?
I guess the only thing that I would like to add is that as we're looking at zoning and changing zoning both here and in other cities, I think, more and more I'm seeing, and particularly here in Louisville, that zoning has to be done, and it has to be done by right. And when I say by right, that means that it does not give the local Metro Council or municipality the right to overturn the decision that has been made to develop there because of by right. And we've seen that time and time again here locally for particular developments. And these are not necessarily developments here in West Louisville, but they are affordable housing developments and developments perceived to be going to be used by African Americans and downright voted down, although they checked every box of zoning at that time. So, I would like to see more and more by right things that are in there that will allow a development to take place. We even here locally try to incentivize developers by providing them bonuses for more density. And, I think if some of that is by right, then we don't have to incentivize anymore. But I'll just stop right there.
Yeah, I want to speak from a personal experience. I'm on the Planning and Zoning Committee. Disclaimer, we can't talk about any specific zoning cases, but I've seen firsthand, when I'm in that chamber and we're talking about zoning in certain areas of town, you'll have council members, and really I would say more than anything, they're carrying the voices of opposition from their constituents who are saying, we don't want those people, or we don't want apartments because X, Y, and Z reason, or they talk about people being low income, using a lot of coded language. And that's why I said earlier, zoning might as well just be Blacks, no Blacks allowed, or whites only signs. It's the same thing, it's just said in a completely different way. But I've seen it firsthand on that committee, how, council members and constituents will drive and influence decision-making at that level. But I'll also push back and say, what does that mean for us in terms of how we engage and push back at that level? And I'll give you a perfect example. District 15 out, central south end of Louisville, they had a development being proposed, which 100 of those units were supposed to be for former Beecher Terrace residents. And, think about how living in Beecher Terrace, you knew what you could afford. We knew what the affordability there was. So they need units to be replaced. They need units replaced because they had units taken away. There was an effort to stop those units from being built. And it took people power. It took people hitting up that council person. It took people hitting up other council people and making sure there was this energy around the fact that they deserve housing that they can afford, and you should not be trying to block it. And thankfully, we were able to, change his position, and we moved forward with that project. But that's just a real life example of exactly what Dunlap was just talking about.
And Councilman Arthur, that's exactly what I mean. There has to be a way within the ordinances. There's some things are just about right. You don't even get to argue about it. You don't get to fight about it. And I think this council, Louisville's council, takes every opportunity, and I'm not saying all council people, but every opportunity is taken to shut down very good, legitimate projects that are not only gives opportunities for African Americans, because I feel like that we ought to be able to live in any neighborhood we want to all across the city. But if we have ordinances and stuff in place that is not allowing housing to be developed that we can move into take place, then we're still going to be stuck in a similar situation like we're in right now.
I'm gonna say this and then shut up because we could talk forever.
Okay.
I'll say this to add to that. It creates a culture on the council, on the legislative body of government, where I have colleagues who care more about looking out for other council members instead of looking out for constituents. I don't care if, I'll use Councilman Kevin Triplett because that's where that development was, District 15. I don't care if he's upset because I didn't look out for him. I'm prioritizing those 100 families that used to live in Beecher that need a place to live, a quality place to live that they can afford. That's what's important. We should never just blindly follow along with some of these council members. And unfortunately, that's what my colleagues do. And I think what you're suggesting in terms of putting something new in amending the ordinance to change that culture, that might be the way to go about doing it. If you can't change the hearts, change the law that can really, tame the heart less.
And I like that you said that there was a people-driven movement. I think there really needs to be more people educated. I sit down with people every day and they're like, I didn't know that was on the books. I didn't know that law happened. It's that education that needs to take place so that they can put pressure on the decision makers. I sat down with a business owner. She didn't know she needed a sign permit. She didn't know she had to come and get zoning approval for her new business to make sure it was in the right zoning district. But if we can shift from these zoning districts to maybe a form-based district where it's more about design and not just strictly about the use, we could probably have some more flexibility and more mixed uses. So we can have, that grocery store, that house, that duplex next to each other. So we have more walkable communities and we can build communities in one place because it's more about the form and people are talking to each other and again, putting pressure on their decision makers. There's other options out there. We just have to be willing to pursue them.
Yes, we have to put pressure on the people that are that are in positions of power to make decisions on our behalf. So yeah, there's always a need for protesters, always. And always a need for protesters. It's really, numbers are really how we get things done. And, when there's a lot of people that have this collective consensus that there's an issue, then there's an issue. And if we get to that point to where we need protesters to make a change, then it's
you always need protesters, okay?
Yeah,
you always need them. Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Jackie.
Okay. I'm just gonna throw this question out here for anybody. How can we change land use regulations that disproportionately impact Black neighborhoods, that affect Black neighborhoods?
So I'm pretty sure it's the same everywhere. Their council members can always have a resolution and a directive to your planning department. You can always start there with an idea. If there's time for a new comprehensive plan, that's a community collaborative effort. Get on the ground, have those conversations, make sure they're having those meetings at a time that everybody, whether you work third shift and you can still attend those meetings because they're having them at different times, make sure you're involved in those conversations and exploring different ideas. You're not just pushing forward the same policies that they had in 1970. Because I've seen some comp plans and that's what they do. They like to just push forward the same policies they had. So that's the biggest thing. I keep saying it, lean on your policy, or you can be like me, just get in the field. That's what I wanted to do. I got in the field.
Yeah, we're going through the process right now of like land development, code reform. We're doing that now, and there's a group, Ms. Jackie, you might know the name of them, Concerned Citizens Coalition around.
Yes.
Shout out to that group because
DC reform.
yeah, they're challenging Metro and just saying, yo, you all need to make sure this process is done right. Now, I'll play the, I'll pull out the double-edged sword because while they're saying it needs to be done right and you need to slow the process down, there's also another group of people on the opposite side of that spectrum saying you need to slow the process down, but not for the same reason, who are okay with the way that everything is, who are okay with land use in the way that the codes work. So I suggested at one point in time to our planning and design services, I said, you should have a meeting with both of those groups and see if we can just kind of duke it out a little bit. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but it's important to make sure we have those meetings because sometimes when we get so like bogged down and into our issue, we don't think about the other end of that issue. Right. And as council people, we have to think about both sides because we're hearing from both sides constantly. But that's the power of Black neighborhoods. All of the Black council members, with the exception of one who represents a majority white district, we need to be letting our council members know, let your elected representative know, this is where I stand on this issue and this is where you need to vote. And keep in mind that we need, in Louisville, Kentucky, we need 14 votes total. There's 7 Black council members, so we need 7 others to stand up. And that pressure comes from people. And it's important to keep that in mind, especially for like, I'm new, I'm loud, I'm Black, I'm pretty. I'm up here and they don't know me. They don't know me as well. So me trying to convince a white council member way out in the east end of town is going to be totally different compared to maybe he has 50 Black constituents who are ready to just stand up and speak to what we're talking about now. We need all of them to make phone calls. We need all of them to send emails. We need all of them to go in on social media. Maybe you guys show up to his house. I don't know, but we need you to stand up as well because, the more people, the more power. And as we talk about preserving our story, we have to come to the realization that the more people we have, the more power. And in our case, segregation put us in close proximity to have that power combined. If it was spread out, even though I know we want to desegregate it, but if we were spread out everywhere, we probably wouldn't have as many Black elected officials as we have right now. So keep that in mind as well as we talk about preserving our story. We're really talking about preserving our power, political power, social power, and otherwise.
Absolutely.
And it's important to have those conversations because you might find out that you have more in common than you have that's not in common. You could have the same goal, but coming at it from different, areas. You may come at it from, I have it, housing is my main goal, or you may have climate change as your main goal, but you can meet at the same place. So have those conversations. Maybe they should meet in that room and then find some consensus.
Absolutely. And I would just add that I think one of the roles of intermediary organizations is really ensuring that we do our part in neutral education of relatable consequences of urban planning. One of the things that we are definitely challenged with is why do I need to come up to this planning meeting when I did the comprehensive plan 6 years ago and nothing came out of it, and I still see, whatever goes. I still see the same economic development incentives. And so one of the things that we wrestle with even in our locale, because we've been a colder market that's warming up is, how do we incentivize the right type of investment and not disinvestment and not displacement? One of the unique things about the reason why our district is still very much intact is that the first Black mayor not only said, hey, we need this program and we need an organization, but partnered with the planning department, Mr. Victor Blackledge, who drew a blue box and said, this is Black folks, right? And essentially for 40 years that has stood the test of time, literally. And so it's extremely important, as the other panelists have said, to be able to relate those consequences, but also make sure that that's a part of the platform. And I will say, both in our locale and other locales, urban planning and its processes are often not debated enough at public forums. They're not a part of public platforms. They're not, but that's the devil is often in the detail. So I think from our perspective as an intermediate organization, that becomes a real key point of advocacy.
Thank you for that. So yeah, advocacy is extremely important. And as Mr. Arthur said about the political power, like, can't stress enough how important it is to be on commissions, boards, and, as we build home ownership or increase home ownership in our Black neighborhoods and Russell neighborhood, we have to understand that creating neighborhood associations are important to changing the trajectory of your neighborhood. And so I have a question from the audience. I'm sure Mr. Arthur, or even if you have a saturation of halfway houses in your Black neighborhoods, that you can certainly answer this question. But what effect has the saturation of halfway houses in Black neighborhoods in your city on Black home ownership?
Nobody wants to live next to that. I mean, it's as simple as that. There's a zoning case right now, obviously I can't speak on, or we're getting letters of opposition because of what you just said. It's right around the corner from where I'm at. So, I mean, it's just the reality of the situation. Different people got different preferences. You also have to realize that in some cases, people are pimping the struggle and not necessarily facilitating these spaces because they care about the people, but because they're trying to make $1 on those people's backs, on those people's addictions, on those people's struggle. And
Yeah.
when you're doing that, it shows, and it shows the way it impacts the neighborhood in terms of, we could talk about property values, we can talk about safety, we can talk about influence, whether it's direct or indirect. It has a lot of impacts that people are perceiving to be negative. And what's interesting for me, like, since I've been on council, is I've noticed almost a sense of self where, we talk about the opposite side of where, like, a white neighborhood doesn't want us there. When you reverse the roles and we talk about halfway houses, or you talk about the way that we treat people who are, as Ms. Jackie says, financially disadvantaged, we got to be careful not to get too bougie ourselves. All of us, majority of us, are one paycheck away from being in that predicament, from being in those streets. And I'll also just throw some more stats on here, in that in Louisville, Kentucky, about 8 in 10 unsheltered people who are sleeping under the expressways, in a tent on a sidewalk, in an abandoned house. 8 in 10 unsheltered people are Black. So while the perception is we don't want these people near where we are, keep in mind that those people are your people. And we have to do everything that we can to protect the people who have the least of the least.
And I agree with you, Councilman Arthur. As a resident that has been fighting the halfway housing, transitional housing, my question to you as well is, how can Metro Council tighten up the regulations regarding halfway houses, transitional housing? They have boarding house regulations, but no halfway house regulations or anything like that. So how can Metro Council work with the community to enact ordinances? because all we want to do is pass the love around instead of being saturated in the Russell or the West End. Let's pass it around the whole city. Let's share the love.
What I've noticed is that the ordinances are on the books in terms of regulations. We didn't have the enforcement tool. You know, there was a capacity. I think Councilwoman Donna Purvis in District 5 brought it up. Why do we have all of this space, all of these people, but only a couple agents to go out and do enforcement? So in this year's budget, we actually approved funding for additional enforcement agents. And to my knowledge, they have not been hired or have not started. I can check on that, but we've added new people to come in and do those inspections to do that enforcement. But in terms of them carrying out their job, y'all got to talk to y'all mayor about that, because they execute. The executive branch is the executing branch. We approve the funding, we pass the ordinances, and then they got to carry it out.
I'll add my 2 cents to this because I was a former member of the Planning and Design Services at Louisville Metro. There is laws for halfway houses, but they either fall under, depending on the proposal that's put forth, either a transitional house or a boarding house. And there was a buffer that had to be put, I think it was 600 foot, and we would do mapping tools. However, as you know, as residents of Russell, they would always come in the same neighborhoods, always in the same neighborhoods, time and time again. But we do have, well, Louisville Metro does have a definition. And then when there was a reform effort to look at those regulations, they thought about tightening up those definitions and looking at that buffer.
Yeah, you got to call your boss out. Who do we need to call to say, I bet gotta do a better job?
No longer my boss.
No longer employed there.
I am no longer an employee of Louisville Metro. But I'm just.
Jacob, we need to continue this conversation over lunch, okay? Because
Absolutely.
It's deeper than that, okay?
Wish we could go to Dasha's.
Okay.
With that,
I miss Dasha Barbers.
she miss you too.
You know they have moved.
That's why I said that.
Yeah.
Halfway houses before we
They're downtown now.
Yes.
So as we talk about the history of Black neighborhoods, we talk about the strategies, we talk about the ordinances, talked about a wide variety of different things. Now it's, how do we push this work forward? And so in creating partnerships with the residents, since we know that that's the best way to build a future for our residents, our team has been working extremely hard, especially Maya White has been working extremely hard so we can make sure that we're pushing the efforts of Black neighborhood preservation. And this is the best way that you can be involved in the decision-making process, helping us to help you make our communities hopeful and exactly what it is that we want the future to look like. So Maya.
Hey girl.
Hey.
Hey everybody. Thank you. This has been a great conversation, thinking about Black historic neighborhoods, preserving them, preserving our history and our legacies. And we're thinking about how we're doing that with RPOP as we're engaging with our residents. I don't know if we talked about it earlier, but we've been engaging with residents since 2018. With events, with programming, and then starting last year, 2020 in October, we met with some residents with the Russell for Wrestling Coalition for 16 weeks, where we studied together. We talked about generational wealth building. We talked about financial policy. We talked about the history of Russell and how much we love it. We wrote notes, we recorded. We spent so much time in our voices together to where we came to a space where we needed to put that into action, into something that we can share. And so that's what became of the partnership pledge that you see here on the screen in front of us. And somebody will drop the link to the partnership pledge. What is the partnership pledge? So as we cultivated all of those voices, all of those concerns about what revitalization is happening, or this potential gentrification that's happening in the Russell neighborhood, and how urban renewal, did what it did in the earliest 20th century with Walnut Street, and how we're seeing those effects that are happening today. How are we going to continue to do investments differently in the Russell neighborhood? How are we going to do future strategies and developments different in our neighborhood? And so we cultivated the Partnership Pledge, which is a document that shares the values and principles of Russell neighborhood residents, those in the coalition and those of us who are working with RPOP. We have our principles, we have our values, we have a shared definition of Black wealth, how we want to stabilize, grow, and create Black wealth in this neighborhood, and create that wealth building strategies. We also have in there a shared decision-making model of how we're going to do shared decision-making around investments, right? And centering the people of Russell, how we're going to do future strategies in Russell and centering the people of Russell. How are we going to do these things? How are we going to hold each other accountable and share space of how we're envisioning what Russell is to look like? And so it's a document that has all of that in that. You can download the pledge on our website. You can download the frequently asked questions as we engage with people like Jacory Arthur, councilman, as we engage with people who are interested, are non-Russell related, have community values and community investment in Louisville community. They supported us and reviewed the pledge as well with our residents as we took the summer to write the pledge with them. And yes, it's a document that shares all of those things. You can download the toolkit on our website if you want to share the message with us. But what we're asking is, and what our residents has given us the goal of, is having 1,000 residents sign the Partnership Pledge by December 2022. And so all homecoming weekend will be at all of our events with a table, with a tablet, with a sheet where you can sign. You can say I'm a Russell resident or a non-resident in solidarity with Russell residents to sign the Partnership Pledge, stating that I am in alignment with some of the things that you are, all of the things, right? Because you don't want to sign some of it. So all of the things that we're saying in the pledge, I'm in solidarity with it, and I want to move people power, right, with these signatures as we engage with people who want to do developments, who want to take interest in Russell. This is what we're saying, what we want, and this is how we're going to do it. And so take a moment to look at that pledge. We are launching it right now. This is our first time talking about it publicly, as we have reviewed it yesterday with R4R, Russell for Russell, and reviewed it over the past 4 or 5 months with the residents. We are here sharing it with you now. So take a time to read it on the website. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to one of us on our page, or over the weekend as we engage and collect those signatures, so we can build with that people power we were talking about earlier, that advocacy to where we are a part of the decisions that's happening in Russell neighborhood.
I just want to add this, Maya, too. I want people to know that the residents believe so much in this pledge. They're taking the lead and getting their neighbors to sign this pledge. We're just following their lead, but the residents are stepping up and getting other residents to sign this pledge because they believe in it so much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ms. Jackie.
Thank you, Maya.
Yes.
I'm so looking forward to signing this pledge myself as a Russell native and a current Russell worker. So sign the pledge, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you this weekend at our homecoming event. So starting off on Friday. Actually, I'll just play our commercial. Why not?
What's up, Louisville? Join Russell Place of Promise for Russell Homecoming Weekend, September 17th through the 19th. Kicking off Friday night, Cheryl Rouse, Soul River Brown, and Louisville Jazz Initiative at the Harlem of the South soiree. We'll be back Saturday morning with the historic Russell Tours, followed by the biggest block party of the summer at 18th and Muhammad Ali. Finally, join us Sunday for brunch and business at Opportunity Corner. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, Russell Place of Promise, and we'll see you at Homecoming 2021.
Oh yeah. So save the date, September 17th through the 19th. That's this weekend. And I want to say thank you to my lovely co-host, Ms. Jackie Floyd, my my lovely panelists, our lovely panelists, Ms. Nia Holt, Mr. Jacory Arthur, Mr. Kevin Dunlap, and Mr. Elijah Davis. So thank you for your time. And if you're looking to get involved this weekend or with Russell Place of Promise, we canvass every Tuesday and Thursday. You can follow us on our social media platforms. And yeah, we'll see you this weekend.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for having me and having all of us.